Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to today's edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called We Try to Be Good, written by Aware Material 507. We try to be a good member species. My people, the Gren, have been working under the boot of the Galactic Confederacy for more than 300 cycles, and we have done our very best to bring the prosperity to all the member races. For context, the Galactic Confederacy is a long-standing association, which is the de facto ruling body for the known galaxy, and it has been for longer than my species has been a part of it. At the birth of the Galactic Confederacy, its main purpose was to protect all member species from any threat and or existential crisis that might appear on the galactic scene. This ideal, however, has gradually worn down as the threats of old faded from memory, and more new species were added to the fold. The once noble, advanced elder races have held power over the Galactic Confederacy for as long as it has existed and, according to the historical records, for a brief time provided the only stability and protection in the hard and unregulated galaxy of the time. However, from age and stability grew complacency, as the elder races began using their influence and power to grant themselves great boons and luxuries, which had been acceptable for a time, as most of the races who came after the elders understood that they had much well earned it. This, however, changed, as the elders in the ecstasy grew ever more greedy, and they began demanding tributes from the newer races who had recently joined the Confederacy. Soon enough, they were threatening these new races with economic devastation, or even whole-scale conquest, which they were able to get away with due to the sheer size and technological advantage. My people, the Gren, were one of the earliest parts of this particular group, so we managed to not be as extorted as some of the latter groups. However, this still condemned us to hard labor and unfavorable trade deals, which shackled our entire civilization to one of the elder races. This had been going on unopposed for so long that no one was ever willing to stand up against or even acknowledge what was going on. That was until a race called humanity was discovered. Based on biology alone, they were not remarkable at all, only being slightly above average in practically all measures, with the exception being their endurance, which is well beyond what most species are capable of. Their civilization was not much of interest either, with only an above-average level of infighting and factionalization within their species, which, while rare, was certainly not unique amongst the myriad of races which walk amongst the halls of the Galactic Assembly. Perhaps the only thing interesting about humanity was the fact that they had clawed out a rather empty region of space, which was nearly completely void of other species, and thus humanity had advanced more than the usual newcomer race. As the elder races began offering the usual extortionist deals and threats, everyone in the galaxy was surprised when the apes decided to decline every single one. Not only that, but they even voiced their disapproval of the kinds of deals which the elder races had attempted to force humanity into signing. This infuriated the elder races who had offered the deals, and soon enough, they declared war on the infant human federation, as they called themselves. Or rather, the elder races ordered their puppet species, which they had control over, to declare war on the humans. After all, the elder races were much too civilized to conduct something as barbaric as warfare. All of us other puppet races who had not been ordered to war looked down at the human representative with pity, as the three different alien races handed their declarations of war at the same time. The human diplomat left quickly thereafter, once they read and reread the declarations, likely to warn the rest of their race about their impending doom and possibly convince their leaders to offer surrender before they were exterminated. As the fleet of puppet races, simple throwaway ships with poorly trained draftees and the politically damned, jumped into the closest of human territories, they were expecting a half-assed planetary defense force and maybe even a diplomatic ship that would try and convince them to stop. Not like they were going to, due to the strict orders from the elder race to make an example of the upstart species. They were not expecting a fully fledged human Federation armada standing guard in opposition of the puppet fleets. The fleet's respective commanders simply shrugged this off as their combined fleet still outnumbered the humans 2-1, and along with their superior technology, the human fleet would be decimated. They were quickly proven wrong as the human fleet fought with the ferocity of a great beast, and their ships would rather go out in a blaze of suicidal glory than surrender. All the while, the fleet battle went on, unnoticed by the alien fleet admirals. The last of the civilian ships were very quickly jumping away further into Federation territory, as military transports continuously landed onto the planet's surface. After nearly 4 hours of grueling space combat, the human armada fell back and jumped out of the system, which the puppet fleet admirals gladly let them do, as they began licking their wounds. And what wounds they were. Nearly a third of the combined Elder-controlled fleets had been lost or severely damaged during the battle, while the human forces had only lost a quarter of their original force. The admirals gulped in worry as the casualties finally finished rolling in. Surely, the human ground force would be easier to take down, given they now had orbital superiority. It would surely be as simple as bombarding the few entrenched installations and offering a chance to surrender in order to capture the planet. As it turned out, it would not be that easy. The puppet fleet ships took positions and began firing off salvos at the defensive bases and other such fortifications on the planet's surface. However, they soon discovered that the humans defending there had installed orbital shielding, which stopped the bombardment in its tracks. This meant that the installations would have to be cleared out the hard way, that being waves of ground troops until the human fortresses crumbled to the ground. As the ground shuttles began descending down to the planet's surface, they were met with swarms of missiles and rockets which emanated from orbital shielded cities and fortresses. Most of the projectiles were shot out of the sky by the point defense systems of the landers. However, a slim few made it past, and for every lander that was hit, another 1,000 soldiers died. The worst part is that the humans seemed to have a near-endless supply of them, which they took advantage of by sending hundreds, if not thousands, of missiles at the landers, not caring if any hit, and simply sending more if they did in fact not. Regardless of the waves of missiles, the commanders in charge had more than enough soldiers to throw at the problem, and soon enough, alien troops were landing on every major continent with surprisingly little resistance. That was until soldiers from all across the planet began to stop reporting in. According to every ground commander across the globe, human forces would appear out of nowhere and slaughter entire squads of puppet soldiers before disappearing into the woodwork. The Elder-controlled force attempted to combat this by sticking in groups and not leaving their formations. However, this just made them easier targets for human artillery emplacements, which were located in every single fortress and base. The puppet ground forces sustained significant casualties before even assaulting their first major base, and it was dropping their morale significantly. The various fleet commanders up in space decided that a show of force was needed, and so they designated one of the larger defensive fortresses on the planet to be the focus for the attack, in order to show those pesky human partisans how futile it is to fight when the only end result is defeat. And so the 3 main alien armies gathered at the outskirts of the fortress's outer defenses and began advancing. Along the way to the fortress itself, the advancing force had to fight through many an outpost and fortress which were each a pain in its own right. However, they were eventually taken down, and soon enough, there was but one final push which needed to be made. And so, at the doorstep of the human fortress, the combined puppet force charged forward towards the fortress in an unstoppable wave, and were promptly met with a wall of fire from the defending humans. Puppet soldiers were cut down in swaths. However, soon enough, the unending torrent of new reinforcements eventually cracked through the plasteel walls of the fortress, where the fighting devolved into bloody melee, which found both sides paying dearly. The last cries of every human officer and commander was to hold the bloody line, and they fought harder than any being had a right to. However, inevitably, the human fortress fell and the alien commanders, despite losing thousands of soldiers, claimed victory. That was until the human fleet, now fully replenished, repaired, and even expanded, jumped into the system and began heading towards the puppet fleet at full speed. The three Elder Aligned commanders were shocked at the sudden appearance of a fully replenished human fleet, given that it had only been a matter of months since the last fleet engagement, as it was unimaginable for such an underdeveloped race to replace their losses so swiftly. The fleet commanders, in their panic, ordered a retreat as they began putting their troops off-planet as quickly as they could. Puppet ground forces scrambled back to their landers in desperation as human ground forces emerged from their hiding in the hills and fortresses and began hounding the retreating alien troops all the way back. As the human fleet got within an hour's voyage away from the puppet fleet, the three fleet admirals' desperation took hold, and they ordered for their fleets to jump away from the system, even at the cost of leaving a sizable vanguard and the rest of their ground forces to the humans' will. Any and all remaining puppet forces promptly surrendered as the newly refurbished fleets of humanity arrived at the planet. The elder races were outraged by the failure of the puppet commanders and promptly executed them for cowardice, before ordering their replacements to begin amassing a new fleet to defend the elder race territory from the barbaric humans' inevitable counterattack. That attack did not come immediately, however, and the fighting was at a standstill as the new commanders were too worried that the same thing that happened to their predecessors would happen to them if they went into human territory. Humanity did not make them wait too long, as their newly refurbished fleet with newly acquired reverse-engineered weapons and shielding to boot. How they managed to reverse-engineer technology, decades or even centuries more advanced than their prior technological standpoint, I will never know. Not that it mattered much. This new and upgraded human fleet charged into the territory of one of the three alien nations which had declared war on them, and in a matter of weeks they had completely taken over the first system and were well on their way towards the next. What surprised the rest of us, who were still watching from the sidelines, was the fact that during and after the conquest of the first system, the civilian populace was nearly entirely untouched. We had expected at least a few light massacres as a warning. However, no such act was committed. What confused us even further was the fact that not long after the majority of the human fleet jumped out of the system, the local population began manufacturing their own ships, crewed by their own people in support of the Human Federation. That was until the first few messages began streaming in from the systems which were filled with stories of the humans aiding the locals in rebuilding their economy and making sure that every civilian acclimated well into the Human Federation. It was not long before the elders branded the world as traitors to the Confederacy and made them public enemy. However, the seeds of doubt and of their control were planted. Those seeds only flourished when the human fleet continued to tear system after system away from elder hands, all of which promptly broadcast their support of the Federation whilst encouraging other planets to do the same. And now, here I stand, representative of the Gren people, as we officially pledge our allegiance to the new Terran Federation and fully announce our complete and total opposition against the elder race's tyrannical rule. Today we, the Gren people, will fight for the stability and protection of the galaxy, which the elder races failed to provide. And we will now do so at the side of our human allies. End of story. Story number 2. Please Stay Away, written by Gas Mask Bro. At long last, after centuries of reaching for the stars, humanity was finally reaching out to touch them. The first starship, designed to take the long voyage to Alpha Centauri in a mere 40 years, was even now passing beyond the outer limits of the Oort cloud and carrying the first humans to ever reach extrasolar space. The crew cheered and embraced each other on this historic moment, and the radio began to chime, indicating that it had received a new message and saved it for review. The captain, expecting a message from NASA, answered it, already going over what he knew would undoubtedly be a line as historic and famous as Neil Armstrong's. "Greetings, humanity, and congratulations on finally becoming a multi-solar empire. We of the Galactic Federation welcome you and are happy to inform you that the area around the stars you know as Alpha Centauri, Proxima Centauri, Bernard Star, and Weiss 1049 have been cleared for your arrival and eventual inhabitation. We wish you luck on your future endeavors, but please stay away." This actually got a few laughs from the crew. After all, it was clearly a joke, and the fact the radio immediately chimed with another new message only confirmed it in their eyes. "Welcome to the big leagues, humanity. We here at Untranslatable Call knew that you would eventually make it this far and are eager to trade with you for materials and cultural goods. Attached to this file is a PDF that should run on your computers that will show you a number of trades that we are interested in making with you. Beam the information on the goods you'd like towards Tea Garden Star and launch the appropriate goods in that direction with an unmanned vehicle, and we shall send the unmanned convoy to you. Please do not under any circumstances approach us. Please stay away." There was less laughter now, much more shock and confusion as the radio continued to chime with new messages. "We are the machines. We are aware of you and have no interest in organics such as yourself. Please stay away. We look forward to debating our ideology with you, from a distance, of course. We do not mean to offend, but please stay away. Do not approach our space for any reason, humans. Please, for the love of all that is holy, please stay away." Hundreds of messages poured in, all containing some variation of the same message. Humanity had discovered that it was not alone in the universe, only to find itself a leper. We were hopeful at first. Perhaps with time they would warm to us, embrace us when they saw that we were not the same barbarous people who had fought tooth and nail to the stars. Yet always, any communication always contained the same mantra, the same plea. Please stay away. Humans begged for an answer as to why. Why did the universe fear us? Why did they hate us? What had we done to be so shunned? What could we do to be forgiven? Could we please meet? May we visit? No answer was given, and the mantra continued. Finally, humanity said, "No, we are coming to visit." The response was immediate from all sides. The mantra increased volumes, bribes were offered. Worlds, energy, minerals, technology, sex bots, whatever humanity wants. Just please stay away. Some agreed to be bought off, but humanity was never a harmonious species, and never would be. Some few reckless nations and individuals decided that whatever the consequences, they would go and meet their neighbors, even if it killed them. Their way was obstructed. Crude minds that humanity easily destroyed or avoided. Automated ships with crude tactics and weapons easily brushed aside. And always, ever echoing through their vessels, the plea to please stay away. Then, humanity reached an alien world, one they knew their neighbors had inhabited, only to find it abandoned, covered with cities, littered with alien cultural artifacts and technology, but all recently abandoned, with not a single soul remaining. On these abandoned worlds were messages to humanity, contracts agreeing to let humans have the world if they agreed to stay away. For some, this was heartbreaking. For others, it was a challenge. They chased their neighbors, constantly devising faster and faster ships. They would meet their neighbors if they had to run them down. These pursuers netted humanity countless light years of territory, as everywhere they went, alien life fled before humanity, constantly begging us to stay away. Eventually, even the most stubborn pursuers gave up and turned back, sadly admitting that it seemed humanity would be forever alone. It was here, when we had abandoned all hope, that we finally got lucky and stumbled across a non-functioning alien craft. Human ships swooped in to rescue it, even as its crew assured their rescuers that everything would be fine if they just went away. But humanity, hungry for face-to-face contact with alien life, refused. and happily rescued ships full of glossy purple spider eels. Finally, with an alien before them, humanity pressed down and demanded, begged and insisted on an answer. Why do you want us to stay away? Even now, our reluctant guests were hesitant to answer. Every sapient species in existence possesses some form of psychic ability. However, it is teleportation. It doesn't matter how far. If we've seen a place, we can teleport there. Yes, every species has an ability like this. Even you. Yes, you do. The reason we avoid you is that your ability is terrifying. Whatever you believe, you make it real. The more of you that believe it, the easier it is to make it real, even if it goes against all of the laws of reality. Surely you realize why we would avoid you now? We did not, and continued to beg for the real reason. After all, everyone agreed that psychic powers weren't real. End of story. I would like to thank our T5 members and patrons, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Vidmori, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.